If you're running a racing yard or you're running a shop or if you're in charge of anything, there are certain things that are avoidable. And the whip issue is completely avoidable. They should be on top of it now.
And what's next for you then? What's the project you're next?
The cemetery will be next, that's for certain.
You've never been afraid to have any opinions. You've been involved in so many different parts of the sport as well, not just being a jockey, you've written books, you've been in the media, you know, you've got things to do with the Oaksey House, etc. What do you think your opinions come from?
They're all based on experiences of being involved in the sport. People have been going on about the whip and they've probably been fed up with me talking about the fact that I think it should be banned. But once you stand away from it, it's an absolute no-brainer. If you're running a racing yard or you're running a shop or if you're in charge of anything, there are certain things that are avoidable. And the whip issue is completely avoidable. They should be on top of it now. The Bryony Frost and Robbie Dunn issue is avoidable. Gordon Elliott being a prat is something that you can't legislate for. But there are lots of things that when it's on your watch, you've got to say, we've got to get on top of this.
And is that down to individuals or is it down to the BHA? Is it down to the PJA?
It's down to leadership at the end of the day, and it's people taking responsibility. As far as I can see, the Robbie Dunn and Bryony Frost incident, I've watched it probably 10 times. I just don't see what's going on. But they probably both had their reasons for getting upset. Somebody, either Richard Johnson or Tom Scudamore at the time, should have said, neither one of you will be missed off that runners and riders board, but you're not doing racing any good. Stop it now and get over it. That should have been the end of it. Excuse me. Or one of the valets should have flagged it up, but it should never have got any further than that. And so hopefully, now that it has, it will stop it from happening again in the future. You know, things can happen once. There's something wrong with the management when it happens twice.
Yeah, and what do you think of the quality of jockeys now compared to back in your day?
Oh, listen, I'm just probably an old fart when it comes to it. They drive me mad, most of them. I watch the racing mostly with the sound off, and I watch lads go round. They're getting paid nearly £200 a ride now, that I just would come back in and say, what do you think you were doing? They just go round, follow the sheep, got the whip in the wrong hand, and I just don't think the standard of riding's good enough. There's one or two that are very, very good, but I think where they're coming from now, they're coming from a pony racing background as opposed to a hunting background. Look at Rachel Blackmore the other day. She's absolutely brilliant, that girl. Bryony Frost, hunting backgrounds. They're just wonderful over the fence, the pair of them. But a lot of these lads there, they come from pony racing where they're probably going too fast too early and they don't know the basics of riding and their balance isn't good. I see too many lads that balance on the reins. And it's probably just me being old, and I'd like to think that there's somebody else out there that is thinking the same thing, but whether it'll change or not, I don't know.
And talking about Rachel and Bryony and the emergence of Holly Doyle on the flat of female jockeys, what was the reaction like to female jockeys back in your day?
Well, Lorna Vincent was a really good girl. We had a lot of good riders, G. Armitage, Tanya. Listen, there's been any number of good riders, and I don't think any man has thought that they weren't good or capable enough, but you always have it in your mind, I don't like the thought of them falling and getting injured. When they fall, girls, by and large, they just go splat on the ground and they're open to far more injuries than guys. And I think that was probably what was in the back of most people's mind. Now that they've come forward, I mean, Rachel and the girls that you've mentioned, Holly Doyle, she had 5 rides at Ayr on a Friday night. She was back in here riding out 6:30 the next morning with a smile on her face. I mean, their work ethic is fantastic, and they're generally good riders. I mean, Bryony and Rachel over a fence are as good as anybody you've seen.
And what advice would you give to young jockeys coming through? Do you do much jockey coaching?
I don't do any jockey coaching, and I'll tell you what's missing from the basics of riding is riding without a saddle. You know, years ago, a lot of people couldn't afford a saddle, or you went to a riding school and you'd be riding without stirrups for most of the lesson. Those things have gone out, and I think it's one of the fundamentals. If you wanted to learn to ride, if you came to me and said you want riding lessons, I'd have 5 minutes riding with no feet in the irons, then I'd get the saddle off, and I promise you after a couple of weeks you'd think you were glued on once I put you back in the saddle. So it's just and you watch people when they're just on a horse. Your job when you're riding is to make sure that wherever that horse puts a foot, doesn't matter whether you're on a race course or whether you're riding out at home, that it's not standing on stones, it's not going to fall anywhere. I'll go down the Gallop some mornings and we'll have somebody that's just come in for the day and they walk right down a load of stones, and it drives me mad. That's your job, to be thinking where is it going and looking after it and then bringing it back and make sure it's okay. From the second you watch jockeys when they pull up, you've got to give horses a chance to just warm down, and the whole thing from the second you get on it in the paddock to the moment you get off it, you've got to be thinking about that horse, what's it doing and what can I do to make everything as easy as I can for it. Most
people knew you as the guy on Channel 4 and obviously the legendary rider before that. What occupies you these days? What have you been up to?
Well, I ride out, got a little horse with Clive Cox, so I ride him out every day.
What's his name?
It's called Invincible Soldier. He isn't very good. He's won 2 races, but he's an absolute gem of a horse. And the people in talk about rehoming racehorses has been featured a lot in the last couple of years. Some you just know straight away that they're not suitable for anybody else outside of a very good rider. Fortunately, this little horse, he's got the most wonderful temperament, and you could put a child on him now. Well, he's had me on him for the last 6 months, so so they do vary. But this one will have he won't go on racing much longer because he's not very good, but he will have a nice future and make a nice horse for somebody.
And you still enjoy the riding?
I love going down there. People go on about staff shortages. We've had staff shortages for as long as I've been in racing, but when you're involved in it, the crack that you have down there, lads' humour, we've got a lot of girls down there, and it's just a really good atmosphere, and the horses are what make it. Being up close to horses years ago, I mean, in 1900 there were 100,000 horses in London. People saw them every single day, and they saw the power of them and the strength of them, and I think a lot of people just don't see that now. But when you get up close and you go racing or you watch them show jump and you see what they're capable of, they're just wonderful creatures, and they're just honestly, they're just amazing animals.
Do you think that with ITV now covering the racing, and we've got Sky Sports Racing, we've got Racing TV as well, is it better than it was back in your day?
Well, listen, it's certainly different, and people are always coming into things differently. I'm sure there's loads of things that they do well, and you take a time to adjust and you say, oh yeah, no, that's really good. But Andrew Franklin was wonderful at producing the programme, and it's all the little things that I wouldn't bother about, and he'd say, it's just a little bit of a shade on that picture, we can't do that. And if he heard anybody say, it's the first time ever, he said, why ever? It's the first time. Why did you say ever? And then you suddenly think, yeah, you're right. It's the first time. It's not ever. If it's the first time, it's the first time. And so, it's all the little things that he used to put into it. But I still enjoy the coverage, and we're just more than anything just blessed to have it on terrestrial TV. I know a lot of people say, oh, well, we got everything streamed. You can watch the racing on your iPad or whatever. But I think it makes a big difference when it's on terrestrial TV.
And why would you never go back to that role?
Well, I did it for 27 years, and that was probably too long, certainly too long for a lot of people in their eyes. But when Andrew lost the gig with High Flyer, he was the one who took me under his wing initially, and it just wasn't going to be the same. It's like riding for Fred Winter. I had 15 years with Fred Winter, and Martin Pipe said, why don't you come and ride for me? I don't know, it's just sort of a loyalty thing. I don't know what it's probably, I don't know, no, it's not misplaced, it's just how you are, and I think that's probably top and bottom of it.
You've worked with a lot of different people across the industry. Who do you look up to most?
Alistair Down, and the fact that I've written a lot of books and he hasn't is testament to his laziness. But he is gifted. There's absolutely no doubt about that. You see what people, David Ellsworth, I was so pleased that he won an award the other day at the Cartier evening. And a lot of trainers, and they don't have to be big name trainers. We've got a guy in the village here called Dominic French Davis and his wife Avery. They do wonders with a small string of horses, and they keep at it and they work at it. Oliver Sherwood, he's had no luck lately. The most wonderful human being. I was talking to Jonathan Burke about him the other day, and Jonathan said he'll phone me. Oh, trainer error was it? He's just a genuinely nice person. And the racing attracts, and horses in general attract a lot of nice people. You get the odd ones that you want to avoid, but by and large, the people involved around horses are just genuinely nice people.
Mm. And you've long been involved in training. You're landlord to Clive Cox. How did that come about?
Well, Clive came here as a salaried trainer. He'd been working with Mikey Heaton Ellis, who sadly died. And then Clive went and started working for Elite Racing, Tony Hill, and he came here. And then things between them, I don't know, they weren't working out. But anyway, the long and the short of it was Clive stayed here, Tony Hill went off with Elite, who's been incredibly successful. He runs a great business, he's a nice person. And then Clive had 30 horses, started getting more success, so we went to 60, then I built him someone, he's got 100. And we had some owners in here the other day, and they have horses elsewhere. And I said, and Clive wasn't in the office, and I said, you do remember, I said, that this lad, on about Clive, has bought 5 stallions for no money at all. Most trainers go through a career never producing a horse good enough to be a stallion, never mind buying it themselves, and he's had 5 in the last 6 years, all really good horses. I said he might never do it again. I said, but he's done it now. He's got a great eye for a horse, and it's like we were saying earlier, if you're the boss, a lot of the time everybody doesn't like you. That's just the way it is, but you cannot have 2 people training a horse. He's got his own way of doing it, but what he is a brilliant judge.
And earlier we were having a chat about how when you first got into racing and you made a bit of money, you chose to invest in property. We're seeing the fruits of that here today, which is wonderful. Well,
listen, it's the way you are. When I was an apprentice, and I was a conditional jockey, they called it then, I used to drive a hot dog van to the races and sell hot dogs between the races. I used to make the beds in the hostel. I used to go babysitting. I had a hire car that used to break down every weekend, and I'd have to drive somewhere and leave my own car with something else. It wasn't ever through lack of effort, and it's something that either interests you or it doesn't. And I've always been interested in building. My dad was a builder, and probably have more interest in that than racing, if truth be told.
And you seem a very positive person, but is there any aspect of anything that you look back on you regret?
Absolutely not. I'm the lucky. I call my autobiography Born Lucky, and every single day I thank the Lord how lucky I am. I'm if I drop down dead tomorrow, I've had a great run at it. I hope I don't, but I've been pretty much injury free, disease free. I can get up, walk around and do what I want to. I've got time on my hands, I've got a few quid in my pocket. I'm absolutely blessed.
You must get annoyed by some things. What annoys you at the minute?
Actually not enough, because you've seen it all, so I don't let things annoy me. And if something does, I've got a friend who's got a great saying. He says, let it be their problem. And then I just say, yeah, you're absolutely right. It's somebody else's problem, so otherwise, and life's so much easier that way. If I was more involved with doing something, I'm sure people would annoy me a lot more, but as it is, I just stand away from it.
And what's next for you then? What's the project you're on next?
The cemetery will be next, that's for certain.
You can't seem to sit still.
No, I'll tell you what I'm doing at the moment. I don't know where it'll work out. I'm convinced that there are better ways to keep horses. So I've been experimenting with the stable where the sides are smooth concrete, and you cut down on bedding, and the tack room is set inside the stable, and and probably, you know, I think we should probably have them in bigger stables. I think if you walk around a zoo and you saw a horse in a stable and thought it's in there for 23 hours a day, you'd have people complaining. They actually seem very happy, and obviously a lot better than being in a stall. And you turn them out in the field and half of them stand by the gate anyway, but I just think that maybe they should just have a little bit more to space around. And I was talking to a guy a little while ago who's an equine therapist, if you like, and he says that we've got bars everywhere. They can lay down and see right the way across the barn, so it's really, you know, they're herd animals, like to see each other. He said if you open the bars up so they can actually put their heads through, and I can hear Clive saying, don't be stupid, there's 2-year-old colts in the be driving. You can't do it with all of them, but some of them, just being able to put their head through and touch another horse, it's got to be good for them.
Okay, I think we got the ending killer line when you were talking about how you're going to die. But
yeah.
How are we? Yeah. How are we doing, guys?
Perfect. Yeah. Got everything.